Well, good afternoon and welcome to this extra stitch episode. It seems like such a long time since I was able to sit down in front of the camera and just give you a little bit of an update on what's happening on the knitting front. So it's an absolute delight to welcome you back, and again, sincere apologies for being away for so long. It's been such a busy season filled with lots of different things. I mean, shortly after sitting down and creating the anniversary episode and then the online Q&A, I was then straight into heading down to Wales to help my mother-in-law move up to the island. She's now here, she's now moved in and settling into life. I also had a week's men's retreat at Sannox Stitches, and that was great, but a very full week. And then pretty much had about 2 or 3 weeks of some kind of flu-y, chesty, virusy type evil lurgy thing, which I'm only just getting over sort of 3 weeks later. Still got a little bit of a cough, so if you hear me coughing or if I'm sounding particularly chesty, that's what it is. So, you know, couldn't exactly sit down in front of the camera and talk to you while all that was going on. And then, of course, last week we had our Sannox Stitches, the third Sannox Stitches retreat. And so that's always what's been going on. And life just has this thing of coming up and biting you and all that sort of stuff happening. So a really busy period, but all the while thinking, oh, I really want to get on and do another video. Of course, while I was sick, I mean, you'd think it was time to sort of just sit down and relax, but when I was off work, I was hardly able to move, so I didn't get much knitting done, etc., etc. So it's just been one of those periods, what can we say? But wonderfully, coming into the spring now, I mean, spring has well and truly sprung. From here, I can see over in the hills there. You can't see it, that's my little balcony. You can't see it that much, but we've got sort of, the trees are starting to come to life again. There's yellow flowers on the gorse. We've got a lovely display of daffodils downstairs in the front garden, and it's actually pleasantly warm. I mean, it's like 15 degrees centigrade out there today. That's like tropical. That's only 1 degree away from summer temperatures. That's really exciting. So yes, spring is springing all over the place, and of course we're coming into Easter week, Holy Week. The day, Palm Sunday, various things on through this week, and then of course Easter Sunday next Sunday. But I did want to get back to you, so thank you for all your patience and for all your encouragement for those who have sent it in. That's been really, really great. I say I've managed to get some knitting done, especially this last week up at the Sannox Stitches. And so I'm going to begin with the knitting progress, let you know what I've been doing. And if you follow me over on Instagram, I am on over there, and I try and sort of put some updates and interact as much as I possibly can. You may have seen some hints that I made some significant progress on the Dustland. The Dustland. Am I enjoying it? Not as much as I did. Am I still liking it? Not as much as I did, but I am determined. Even if I lose more hair, if that's even possible, I am determined to get this thing finished. However, last week when I was up at Sannox Stitches with some lovely guests, I did manage to complete the body of the Dustland. So I will try and show you. Here it comes. Are you ready for this? Drum roll. Here it is. Well, you've seen the top and the yoke. I think it's looking good. And as you can see, I'm all the way down to the bottom, and there at the very bottom is the 2x2 rib. So the body is finito. The body is absolutely finito. Now, here's the saga of the bottom of the jumper. I was merrily knitting away, as you do, and was working my way through the rotation of patterns. Now, as you can see here, there's the sort of diagonal rib, and then there's the moss stitch section, And this bit here, this is what they call the broken rib, was where I got to in terms of the length that I was wanting. I was wanting it to stop here at the bottom of this broken rib. So I duly finished the bottom of the broken rib, did the few extra garter stitches, and then started to go into the 2x2 rib. But as you can probably guess, the broken rib with a few bits of garter row and then the 2x2 rib just looked really weird. I mean, can you imagine it? You kind of can if I, do some sort of tucking. It was basically, I'm not doing that very well, but you know what I mean. It was basically one kind of rib straight into another kind of rib, and I just thought, something, I don't like that. It just looks odd. It looks like a mistake. It looked like those little garter rows were just very bad errors. And so what I decided to do in the end, although it's made it a little bit longer than I would necessarily like, I've gone back and done another row of the next repeat, which is the diagonal rib, and then the garter stitches, and then doing the 5 centimeters or so of rib at the end. Now what that's left me with is something which I think just flows better. It flows better together. But I think it probably has left me something with, 5, maybe 6, 7 centimeters longer than I wanted. That's not necessarily a problem because with a jumper, you don't always just leave it hanging straight. You might sort of ruffle it up a little bit to sit, in my case, under my barrel here. So it's not the end of the world. But there we go. The body is absolutely done, and the further I got on with this, the more natural it becomes, and the more pleasing it becomes. Actually, it feels like a bit of an achievement. Again, although it's looking a bit big. Now, of course, the next stage is to go back and pick up the sleeves. One on that side, of course, and because I've got 2 arms, one on that side as well. And it's quite possible that if I had been able to have a few minutes on my own last week, I may actually have picked up the sleeves and then did a bit of sleeve knitting on Sannox Stitches knitting retreat. However, you might remember my catastrophe because last Sannox Stitches I'd gotten as far as casting off for the sleeves, and what I did whilst I was surrounded by wonderful people, chat, I managed to read the wrong pattern for the casting off of the stitches for the sleeves, and ended up with an entire mess that I then had to spend hours undoing. So I thought, I'm not going to do anything fancy while I'm enjoying the company of the good people at Sannox Stitches Knitting Retreat. So the next task to do is to then crack on with those sleeves, and I'm hoping that the Dustland Sweater will be finished, and although we're coming into the summer and I probably won't wear it, it will definitely be ready for next autumn. For wearing in whatever fashion. So there you go, that's the progress with the Dustland Sweater. Huge relief. I mean, I've been able to take it along to knitting group, because see, once you get used to how the pattern goes and all those repeats go, it's in your head, and you can, even if you're chatting or whatever, you can do it. But say just the final stages of getting those sleeves picked up, it wasn't there. So I've been doing it in knitting group, not so much at home, but definitely on the retreat last week. So what I decided to do was, rather than try and do all sorts of complicated things with sleeves, I decided what I'd do is I've always got a little pile of sock yarn in my stash. So I thought, well, come on then, let's just pick up the sock yarn and have a go. Now, I think I might have mentioned this before, because the last pair of socks that I did would have been using the same pattern. I've picked up the Magic Loop sock pattern, I think by the Crazy Sock Lady, which is much easier to do, to turn the heel, using this sort of more traditional method. Before, I've been doing the afterthought heel, as you all know, and so I quite enjoy this pattern which enables you to use magic loop, cables on your needles, and go ahead now. So I'm at this stage. Ideally, I'd been able to sit and chat to you while I was knitting, but I'm at this stage where I'm having to pick up stitches for the gusset, or for the, is that what you call that thing? The gusset? I think so. I was at that stage and I thought, well, I can't for the life of me do that when I'm trying to talk to camera. So you've got no idyllic, ironic scenes of me knitting at the beginning. It's just a straight hello and get on with it. So that's just how it is. So there we go, another sock. And this is, again, Regia's self-striping, self-patterning sock yarn, which I quite like. So yeah, there we go. So that's what I did at the back end of the Sannox Stitches retreat. It was lovely. We had some lovely folks join with us. A nice, quiet, reflective group. So there was some lots of nice chat. But just loads of nice peaceful knitting up there at Sannox, and the weather was a bit interchangeable, so towards the end of the week some of the guests were a bit sort of like, terrified that their ferry wouldn't actually sail, and some of them didn't, but there's more than one way to get off the island, so I think everyone got home eventually. So that was a lovely time. Just great to have some knitters coming from near and far. The furthest this week was a lady called Pip who lived in Australia. She didn't come to the UK just to come and knit at Sannox. She was visiting family but was able to join us for a week. And so folks from Scotland, folks from England, and then folks from here on the island as well. And that was good to see some locals pop in for a few sessions. So that was fine. So we've got our next Sannox Stitches is happening again in September, and we are getting close to being pretty much full for that. And from what I hear, we've got some folks coming from Canada, some folks coming from the States, as well as some folks from the UK. So if you were thinking of doing that, good idea to get yourself booked in to Sannox Stitches. And I'm fairly sure that before too long, we'll be starting to let you know the dates for 2025. It just seems that I hear little messages that you're keen to come, and I'm delighted to have you come and share with us here in Arran for a little bit of knitting, a little bit of rest, a little bit of relaxation. So yeah, it's just been a really busy season, but glad to have got the Sannox Stitches done and enjoyed and all the rest of it. Now, the idea was, in sort of arranging the dates for both of the Sannox Stitches retreat, is that we do it close to a weekend where there's some yarn shows here in Scotland. And yesterday, Saturday, just after Sannox Stitches, there was the Scottish Yarn Producers Showcase. You might remember a few main episodes ago, this time last year, or just after, I was showing you around the Scottish Yarn Producers Showcase. Now, lots of things conspired, which meant I couldn't actually go and book tickets, but it just so happened that when the time would have come around to actually go over to Perth for the Yarn Producers Showcase, there was no ferries. So we've had a bit of a storm blowing through, and although it's calm today, we're due to have another little bit of a storm blow through next week as well. So it's just one of those things of island life. It can be really challenging when you're trying to sort of get off and get off the island and do things, especially if it's things like medical appointments, funeral services, other things you have to do which are quite important. It can be frustrating. However, when you don't need to go anywhere, Arran remains such a beauty, remains such a joy, and all that sort of stuff. So in terms of other stuff I'm knitting, you may remember that I was knitting the Jessica McDonald pattern for Tracy with the colourwork yoke that I showed you probably for the last couple of episodes. I made a little bit of a start on that. There's absolutely nothing to show you there because I've been focused on the Dustland. I've been doing little bits and pieces in between. And so haven't had any time at all to even just think about that. So that's there in the background, and now that Dustland's getting on a good bit better, I'll have time to go back to that sweater that I was knitting for Mrs. Clark and get on with that. I think the only other thing that I've made in between, and I don't have it here because it's been gifted away, but I'll put here a little picture of one of Kerry Lord from Toft, one of her little miniature bunnies, and that was for a young lady who comes along to our church on a Sunday, and it was an act of repentance and restitution. Come on, confession's good for the soul. Confession's good for the soul. She had said something in our morning service, and I misunderstood her. A, because my hearing is ridiculous, and B, just because of the busyness and the stress, and I managed to upset her. So by way of restitution, I thought, I know she likes cuddly toys, so I made her a little bunny. So that I got up to that as well in these last few months. So hopefully we're friends again. I think we are, but that's very good. What else has been going on? Well, lots of things really in general life as a whole. Dougal, the wonder dog, the dunder dog, is growing spectacularly, and he is such a loving boy. I'll try and insert a picture of him here so you can see him. He's just a lovely chap. He's very affectionate, and very, very sort of easily fits in with the rest of the family schedule and all that sort of thing. And I say the girls are off taking him out to the beach today so that I can sit down and talk to you. As I mentioned at the beginning, mother-in-law has now moved up. She's settled in a new house and starting to get herself around the island and various bits and pieces. It's going okay. It's going okay. Work-wise, well, things are about to shift there actually, because as I might have mentioned, my sort of one of my jobs is as the pastor of Arran Baptist Church, and we've seen some very joyful growth in the congregation there. In that the congregation has more than doubled in size in the last year in particular. So that creates all sorts of new and exciting opportunities, again, as I've probably said before. But the upshot of that is that I'm about to shift my work priorities. So very soon, at some point in the next few months, the hope is that I'll be able to go full-time with the church. And that means that I'll drop the 20 hours that I do up at Sannox Christian Centre. However, the hope is that I'll still be involved up there fairly much in the way that I have been doing, but doing that is just part of the sort of the rhythm of life and all that sort of thing. So hopefully be able to support everything up at Sannox and keep the retreats running and liaise with the staff team and all that sort of thing. So that's a little bit of a shift, because what eventually happens is you got two roles which are 20 hours each a week, 40 hours. But then you've got all the lovely extra bits, and it's all the lovely extra bits which have meant that it was becoming more and more unsustainable as things were growing and developing. I am a finite fella with lots of failures and foibles. That's lots of F's, but that's the reality. And so it's a nice problem to have, but it has been a problem. And the back end of the year and maybe the beginning of this year was particularly fraught with all sorts of pressures. So just taking the opportunity to reassess life and the pressures, because you don't want to be in a situation where work and ministry is as such that you start to just build up the stress, you start to lose the connection with friends and family and with some of the things that sort of feed me and give me joy. And of course the opportunity to get involved in the community. And of course, you start to really know that things aren't going so well when you don't have time to do your knitting. What else can I say? When you don't have time to do your knitting, that's when you really have to reevaluate life. So that's what I've done. Everyone's been really helpful, supportive, and we're really looking forward to seeing what the next period of life looks like. So over the next few months, we'll see that transition. But fear not. We are hoping to continue with Sannox Stitches, and there will also be a focus here on the channel. So that's pretty much all the life updates that I have for you. right now. Now, what's happening over the next few months? Well, now that things are starting to settle for me personally, it's time to start thinking creatively about what is coming up in the future as far as the channel here is concerned, and a few other things in life. Now, I'm recognising that it's been a wee while since we've done anything knit-alongy, so I'm currently doing all sorts of thinking and exploring as to what the next thing might be. Also coming up for the summer, I'm hoping that we can do a big charity knit-along again. I know that many of you really enjoyed being able to get involved in making the beanies last year. And that was absolutely great fun. Well, I enjoyed it anyway. I always enjoy knitting the beanies, and of course we were able to send those to various charities. Some of you guys sent them to charities local to where you are, and the folks here in the UK, many of you sent your beanies along to me, and they were able to go to a great charity working in Glasgow. So I'm just thinking through some logistics as to what we do with either some sort of knit along, and then moving into the summer months, doing some sort of big charity knit along. And it's been absolutely ages since I've been able to have the time and the freedom and the space to get out into the community and start showing you a little bit more of island life. So I'm hoping that after this little extra stitch here, in the next month or so, I'll have time to start getting back out into the community, because this is the time of the year, around about Easter time, when life on the island starts to pick up again. You've no idea how sort of everyone just sort of disappears during the sort of late autumn, winter and early spring. You know, it gets dark here, the weather gets a bit foul, so people sort of retreat indoors, and I like to think that that's people sort of retreating indoors and, you know, getting involved with their knitting or whatever it is that they do. There's a huge amount of artists on the island. So I'm hoping to get you out and about again very soon, now that the weather starts to get a little bit better. But in terms of, excuse me, in terms of the knitting front, what's ahead for me? Well, as I say, Dustland Sweater for Tracy by Jessica McDonald. The odd bits of, you know, sorting the socks out. But the biggest thing I'm going to have to do, well, it's not that it's incredibly big, but the most pressing emergency I've discovered is that I think I'm coming to the realisation that I'm running out of wool for the Dustland. I don't know how I managed that, because, you know, I did all the calculations, I did all the measurements according to the size and da-da-da-da, but I think unless I have managed somewhere to stash some Sirdar Country Classic West Yorkshire, whatever it is, wool in the olive green, unless I've managed to stash 2 or 3 balls away somewhere, this is the only one that I've actually got left. So I'm going to have to sort of look up the lot number and see if I can go back to the source and get some more to finish the Dustland. So yeah, so there's a few things to do as far as the current projects go. And then I may have said this before, but I'm hoping once I've sort of worked through that, perhaps for me as I get into my summer knitting, is I want to start work on Martin Story's Midwinter blanket. This is a blanket which I may have spoken about before, but it's now coming it's filtering its way to the top of my want to do list. And so I'm hoping that I can get that started. That will probably involve buying in some more wool. I'm not sure. I mean, if I look at the stash, it may well be that I find that I've got stuff there that I can use for that. And as I just sit and think that through, I think I probably do have some that I could at least make a good start on. So that's coming up. And the benefit of that, I think, is that this pattern is made up of squares with different designs, which are obviously a general winter kind of Christmassy theme. But I'm looking at these squares and thinking, well, you know, come the summer, in between knitting beanies or whatever for the big charity knit along, I'm fairly sure that I could be sort of working on some of those smaller squares, and it means you're not being covered by something like a huge jumper or a huge thing. And so that's what I'm thinking of in terms of my next step. So that's the future plans in terms of knitting. Now, what else is there that I can talk about? Well, the biggest thing for us this year is that my daughter Katie, who you may remember from last year on the vlog when I knitted her a sweater, she appeared in one of the episodes. She very shortly, as in this coming Friday, turns 18. She'll be finishing her school exams, finishing high school. And then she's in the process of getting ready to go off to university. So summertime is looking like it's going to be a time to sort of get everything organised, get all the supplies that she needs to be heading off to university. And of course, it means going to university on the mainland, so we're probably going to have to take a trip to get her sorted out and various things like that. So that's quite big on the family scene. And then finally, although all the details aren't necessarily final or for huge public sharing, it looks like there may be a possibility of us moving into a different home. You may remember me talking about that various episodes ago. This home that we live in is owned by the Church of Scotland, and this house in particular is linked to a church which is now closed. So we eventually, although there's no pressure, we eventually will have to sort of move on from here. So looking for something permanent, which means we can establish ourselves in our future here on the island where we hope to stay for a long, long time. So that may be coming up into the summer as well. And so you never know, you might get some videos of some sort of removal or decoration or goodness knows, that will be exciting for you, won't it? I'm sure you're really looking forward to that. And of course it does mean finding new space for all the wool and all the books and all the patterns and all the, all the stuff and, all that stuff you gather in life. So that's slightly coming up as well. The rest of the year isn't particularly looking any quieter than the beginning of the year is. Knitting wise, I've managed to sort of keep up with a few podcasts here and there, and I just want to give a shout out to Martin at Knit365. I quite enjoy sitting down and listening to Martin, and he's always got a huge amount of projects on the go. I think at the last count it was something like 13 or 14 different projects on the go. Now, I'm sure I've heard him at one point talk about as many as 20 projects all going at the same time. He's knitting a sort of Argyle type sweater for his partner. He's always crocheting and he's quite a big Toft aficionado, and lots of different interesting patterns going along. So I'll leave a link to Martin, catch up with him. He's a bloke living down in Wales, and it's always good for us guys to know that there's other guys out there who are knitting, which brings me to say that there were several moments of our Sannox Stitches knitting retreat last week where there was equal number of men to women. I mean, go figure. Equal number of men to women. So that was pretty fantastic. So yeah, I thoroughly recommend Martin. Go and see what he's up to down there. We share a lot of similarities because as well as his knitting and his crochet, he also plays in his local brass band as I do. So there you go. And we're both fairly well built, and we've both got a little bit of beard and a little bit of baldness and all that sort of thing. So brother from a different mother sort of thing. Actually, a couple of nights ago, I think it was Friday night, I managed to catch up with a new episode of Fruity Knitting, and that was really fascinating. And many of you I know will be interested in that if you haven't watched it, because Madeleine does an interview with a Danish, I think she's a psychologist, and she's been doing research into the power of crafting on mental well-being. Now, many of us who are knitters and crafters will be able to give some sort of anecdotal testimony to the fact of how our knitting and our crochet or our crafting helps us. It's a boost to all sorts of things, to the serotonin, to the rest, to the slowing down, to all that sort of thing. And this lady, whose name I can't remember, I'll put it on the screen here. This lady has done a lot of good research into thousands of crafters, and she's pulled together all their reflections. And so they're getting to the stage now where where they may be able to prove in lots of different ways where sport and moving your body and music and those sorts of things are good things to do to boost your mental health and well-being. But this data that this Danish psychologist has been gathering in her book, I think it's called, Craft Psychology. Her research is now meaning that physicians and folks who are supporting folks can actually say, well, if you take up something like this, here are some of the kind of ways that may help you. I think that's brilliant research, because I've often felt in myself there's a sort of intrinsic value in so many ways of being able to craft. Yeah, either the process of crafting and making something, the gifting of the thing that you've made, or even some of the decisions and the choices that you make. What yarn will I use? What size will I do with it? All those sorts of things are really things which boost our sense of, I suppose, control and autonomy and all those sorts of things. Anyway, there's more about that over on the most recent what's it called again? Fruity Knitting episode. So thoroughly recommend that you go and watch that. So yeah, I've been trying to get a few podcasters going as well. And of course, the other things to celebrate as well. It's funny how you sort of feel as if you get into a little bit of a knitting community. Yeah, and of course, in recent weeks, Inga from Knitting Traditions has had her baby. So a huge congratulations to Inga. And you'll have heard me say many times here on this channel, my friend Meg down in Bristol with her knitting shop. She's also not long had a little baby. So lots of lovely things to celebrate in the knitting community as well. Anyway, this is the first step back into getting in front of the camera after a little bit of a hiatus. Sorry for that, but busyness and sickness and work and all those sorts of things just getting in the way. But I'm hoping that as my work-life balance starts to, it won't get radically less, but it will shift and change a little bit. And so I'm hoping a little bit more of a sort of relaxed pace. I'm hoping to be able to get back into the swing of things as far as the podcast is concerned here. But a huge thanks to all of you who are sort of hanging on out there and who are still coming back to watch the ramblings of this old guy here. It really is a privilege to be able to do this podcast, and it's time to say thank you once again for all your support in all the ways that you do that, whether you're watching the videos, whether you're clicking and liking and subscribing and all those sorts of things that as YouTubers are always inviting folks to do. Or whether actually you're one of those great supporters who buys me a little coffee on Ko-fi every now and again is a wonderful thing. Something that I don't take for granted, and there's certainly no expectation that anyone do that, but it is appreciated. So thank you all for dropping in for this little period of with me this afternoon. I do hope you're all well. And do let me know what you're knitting. Do pop over to Instagram, say hello. I'm on Facebook as well as the Albanach Knitted, but I'm not quite as engaged over there with that. So you take what you get. But drop a line. Let me know how you're getting on. What are you knitting? What's the summer knitting looking like for you? And all of you down there in the southern hemisphere, you're probably coming into your main knitting season. I don't know what's on your needles. So we'd love to hear and see what you're doing. But that's all for now. Marshall Leven Draster, Agus Bianach Jagut. Take care. God bless. And we'll see you again soon.